being a parent, if I recognize, for example, that I have insecure attachment of any type, is there is anything I can do except of reading books? Can I do something doing myself, or basically I need to find a psychotherapist, and that's the main road for me? So what's my next step?
Uh-huh. Yeah. I would say in part, the answer to that depends on maybe mm, how strong the insecurity is. Like if it's, you know, if it's a mild degree of insecurity, or even if someone has secure attachment, but maybe trends toward some, like one type of more of the insecure pattern. Again, it's a continuum. There's no, it's not like, okay, there's this absolute form of this way and absolute form this way. There's a continuum that will be affected by how we experience stress. So for example, um, somebody may mostly be secure, but in very stressful circumstances, they might fall into um, one of the insecure patterns. Let me just take one little aside for a moment and highlight that the insecure patterns, I think really the best, one really good way to understand them is that they're ways that a young child learns to adapt to the experience that he or she has with the caregiver. Okay, so for example, the avoidant pattern, where the person wants to stay away from closeness. Usually what causes that is an overall experience that a young child has with the caregiver, where the caregiver has been like rejecting in some way. The child has experienced being pushed away or rejected, or something hurtful or painful has happened when the child has sought connection with the caregiver. Okay? And it just makes sense that if that happens too often, the child will learn, well, I'm just not going to go to try to have connection with the caregiver now, because every time I do, then it's painful. I feel rejected. It's hurtful. So I'm going to keep distance. So that's an emotional adaptation. With the anxious preoccupied form, usually that's caused by a parent who maybe is not very attuned to the child and maybe is preoccupied with other things, maybe very anxious himself or herself as a parent, too anxious. So the child has more often than not, or too often, the experience that the caregiver won't really be there. The caregiver won't perhaps be actively rejecting, but maybe is not very accessible. And so the child has to learn to get really focused on the caregiver and try to figure out how to engage the caregiver's attention and to keep the caregiver's attention on his or her needs. So if that's how the child has adapted to that situation, to become over-focused and really concerned about the effect that he or she has on the adult, on the parent, means they have, anxious, preoccupied, insecure attachment. They might, but it also just might be within the normal range. There's a whole continuum, and I don't pathologize this at all.
Mm-hmm.
I look at it as ways that we adapt to try to be safe and stay safe. So, if a parent or any adult learns about the basic attachment patterns, that is very, very helpful. And the awareness itself can be a contributor to reducing the operation and the frequency and the intensity of those patterns. If there's if these patterns happen more, like if they're more in this toward the severe range or more prominent range, probably psychotherapy is a good idea. And an attachment-focused psychotherapy is something that can be really helpful. But self-awareness of one's patterns is very, very helpful, because that's one thing that psychotherapy can do. So even outside of psychotherapy, if somebody reads and watches videos and tries to learn about their patterns, then they become more self-aware. And if those patterns come up, then they're more able to kind of see it and say, oh, all right, well, I'm feeling, like I'm pulling away from this person now. I must not feel very safe. Okay, well, maybe I can talk to the person about it a little bit rather than just disappearing. And then, that's a something that can overall help with the pattern as it appears. But again, psychotherapy is something that is often very helpful, and for some people probably needed in order to heal some of the more problematic manifestations of insecure attachment.